There is something vaster than the wide open sky, and that is my life. There is something deeper than the fathomless sea, and that is your life. There is something more precious than all the treasures of the universe, and that is our lives. However, all lives will vanish in seconds if one nuclear weapon explodes.
My father is a sole survivor of the atomic bomb.
As long as we have nuclear weapons, one day, by accident or by intention, nuclear weapons will be used in a conflict. And we cannot afford a nuclear conflict.
Malaysia has been working very strongly to ensure that nuclear weapons should be eliminated. Ever since independence, that has been something that has always been a principal position of Malaysia's foreign policy.
We believe that everyone has the capacity to create value and to contribute to peace.
My father was sent to Japan to study education, and he was then only 19 years old. Then the war has already started. There is always bombing. The bombing is almost usual, but on the 6th of August at 8:15, I think, it's the same thing, and there was a siren, and they all went into the shelter as well. But later on, there's a second siren that indicates that now the aeroplane has passed, and therefore you can come out of the shelter. That's what they did. But the difference this time is basically the bomb has not exploded. The atom bomb actually was slowly parachuted down. By the time they moved out of the shelter, the bomb was about mid-air, and that's when it exploded. Immediately, more than 70,000 people died. Yeah? But fortunately, my father was trapped under the roof of a building. So he was unconscious over that period of time. So he doesn't know much, except for the next day when he get conscious again, and he saw light passing through all these rebels. And then he woke up and crawled out, and suddenly found that everything is flattened. All the buildings that he knew, all the landmarks that he knows is not there anymore. And therefore he couldn't find his bearing. He doesn't know where to go because the landmarks are not there. Fortunately, I think there was a river, and he looked for the river. The river leads him back to where he used to go, the dormitory and so on and so forth. I think that's where the experience really starts. The river, according to him, is full of dead bodies, because those people who are being bombed, and they floated into the river from wherever they are. Most of the people that he met who is alive are asking for water. But I remember he said the moment they drink the water, they die almost immediately. So there must be the radiation, there must be the poison in the water. Then he refused to give the water anymore. There are other things that he saw, perhaps something like when the skins are peeled off and they just hang by the nails, and then the skins are all burnt. Some of them we have got the pattern of the shirt being imprinted on the skin because of the heat that get this transferred. Yeah. They see a lot of people at the end of the day shouting in agony. I mean, they pull their hair, and the hair also come out at the same time. So you can imagine the kind of misery and suffering that he's able to see at the age of 19. So I think the impact on him must be very, very big.
While Professor Zulkifli had the chance to listen to the first-hand story from his father, for Dr. Ronald McCoy, he first learned about the horrific stories of the Hibakushas, survivors of the atomic bombings, from the book Hiroshima by John Hersey when he was still a medical student. Later on, he joined the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. That was a turning point that led him to the path of striving for a world without nuclear weapons.
As an obstetrician, I have spent many years nurturing pregnancies. And at the end of a pregnancy, one delivers a healthy, beautiful baby. Surely that baby deserves to live in a world without nuclear weapons, which threaten its very survival. We need to come down to zero nuclear weapons, because even the use of 100 nuclear warheads today would create enormous heat and clouds of radiation which would waft into the atmosphere and create what we call nuclear winter, because it'll cut off the sun for several months. Vegetation will not survive under those conditions without sunlight. And millions and millions, billions of people will be faced with starvation. Nuclear weapons have disastrous humanitarian consequences, and therefore humanity will not be able to survive a nuclear war, whether it is regional or global. We have to change the way we think about conflict, about war, and this whole argument about deterrence, this whole argument about rational human beings possessing nuclear weapons is really a nonsense. As long as we have nuclear weapons, one day, by accident or by intention, nuclear weapons will be used in a conflict. And we cannot afford a nuclear conflict. So in 2005, at the NPT Review Conference, a lot of promises were made and broken by the nuclear weapon states. A kind of confidence trick, if you like, talking with us and saying, yes, yes, we will eliminate nuclear weapons, but having no real intention to do that. And I realized that we in IPPNW had really been taken for a ride by the nuclear weapon states. And so I thought we should approach nuclear disarmament in another way. And that is to try and get together all the nuclear disarmament forces together in a global campaign. So we, IPPNW suggested, we call it the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. And there was immediate support within IPPNW and from all the other NGO groups who are still involved with us in ICAN to eliminate nuclear weapons. And finally, in 2007, we launched ICAN. And then, of course, came this big step, I feel, that was taken where we looked at nuclear weapons as illegal weapons. We think that a treaty to ban nuclear weapons will strengthen the argument for the elimination of nuclear weapons. You don't have to be a doctor to be involved. I mean, it affects everybody, really. I think the answer really is to form groups within each country, and we all come together and work with the government, the country in which you live, work with your government. And most governments are for nuclear disarmament.
Malaysia has been working very strongly to ensure that nuclear weapons should be eliminated. We continue to give statements at the General Assembly in this regard. We also involved in the Conference on Disarmament based in Geneva. We're one of the members. Ever since independence, that has been something that has always been a principal position of Malaysia's foreign policy. If we go back to 2007, Malaysia and Costa Rica had put forward a model Nuclear Weapons Convention, and this was a comprehensive convention that looked at the whole range of activities that would be needed in terms of nuclear disarmament. In late 2015, early 2016, a lot of countries still had not come up and firmed up that position. In the discussions that we had, Malaysia with other countries, as well as with international partners such as Soka, Gakkai, as well as ICANN and others, one of the things that came up was that we need to look at having the possibility of a treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, a so-called nuclear ban treaty. In the sessions of the open-ended working group, Malaysia made a number of statements making the case of why we need to move in that direction. If nuclear weapon states were unwilling to engage in nuclear disarmament discourse, then it would be necessary for the non-nuclear weapon states to create the pressure for nuclear disarmament. And from those discussions, Malaysia, Brazil, and Costa Rica, we came up with a working paper that was submitted to the open-ended working group, which, one, listed out the sort of prohibitions that should be included inside a treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, and secondly, called for the negotiation in 2017 of a treaty banning nuclear weapons. In 2016, the UN General Assembly then came up with a resolution that authorized for the conference that led to the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons in 2017. The 2017 conference that led to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was very significant. This was the first time that countries got together to really prohibit nuclear weapons. We had very long nights, very difficult negotiations, but it was something that I believe all those present felt very passionately about, that this was a good cause and this was a good way for us to ensure that future generations would be free from the threat of nuclear weapons. So there was a question of what is the point of a treaty where the nuclear weapon states are not involved? But that didn't stop us, because the point of view that we took, which is the moral point of view and the legal point of view, was that international law comes into force and comes into play when countries get together and decide to make it so. And in this case, international law means that all countries are equal. So we didn't have to wait for the bigger countries. We didn't have to wait for the nuclear weapon states or other countries to get on board. This is something which we, the non-nuclear weapon states, can do, and this is something that we should pursue. So we negotiated the treaty and we came up with a treaty so that over time, the nuclear weapon states will realize that it is in their interests, their security interests, as well as the interests of all other countries, that nuclear weapons be eliminated.
The TPNW embodies the vow of the Hibakushas to never allow anyone else to suffer what they had endured. Their courageous spirit must be inherited and passed down to future generations. Therefore, education plays a vital role in instilling awareness among the young minds on the importance of peace and disarmament.
As far as I can remember, 6th of August is the busiest day of my father's life. We gather the family and he will then tell the story again of his experience when he was in Hiroshima, and particularly the part where he suffered a lot. And the idea was basically to tell us that stay away from aggression. That aggression do not bring any good to anybody, even though it comes from your enemy. The training that for us is basically how do you train yourself to be peaceful with yourself first, and then you can learn how to give other people what peace is all about. So as a teacher in a university like this, I would want to bring this message across. At every August 6th, we try to organize something with Soka, Gakkai, with other parties, so that you can involve many more people, particularly the youngsters.
Soka Gakkai Malaysia, or SGM, has been actively promoting nuclear disarmament. The overriding theme and the motivation for our activities has and will always be based on the belief that everyone has the capacity to create value and to contribute to peace. And this is the conviction of my mentor, Mr. Daisaku Ikeda, the president of Soka Gakkai International or SGI. His commitment to peace stems from his experience as a young teenager during World War II. His 4 elder brothers, one by one, were drafted into the army. Mr. Ikeda was especially close to his eldest brother Kiichi. And when Kiichi was sent abroad to fight in war, he brought along a piece of a broken mirror that belonged to his mother. And somehow, although they were physically apart, looking at the mirror was a way to bring their hearts together. And there was once he told Ikeda about the horrors of war, declaring that there was nothing glorious about it. And at that time, his mother's only wish was for her sons to return home safely. Unfortunately, Kiichi died in battle. Mr. Ikeda recalls, although his mother always seemed strong and brave, the news of Kiichi's death shook her, bringing deep pain and sorrow, and it was painful to watch his mother grieve over the loss of her son. And at that moment, Mr. Ikeda felt in the depths of his being the tragedy and cruelty of war. And later, Mr. Ikeda met his mentor in life, Mr. Jose Toda, second president of Soka Gakkai. And at a dire time, when the nuclear arms race was intensifying, Mr. Toda made a declaration calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons on September 8, 1957, in front of 50,000 youth, and this became the prime point for the peace movement of the Soka Gakkai. He condemned nuclear weapons as an absolute evil, a threat to humanity's right to live. And what struck me the most was his call to attack the problem at its root and to rip out the claws that lie hidden in the very depths of such weapons. And that is the thinking that justifies the act to threaten, to control, hurt, or kill another, or that one's life is more important than the other. So in the years since Mr. Toda's declaration was made, Mr. Ikeda and the SGI have put forth proposals and developed grassroots activities to realize a world without nuclear weapons. There was one time Mr. Ikeda was asked if he thought World War III would ever occur. And instead of analyzing the possibility of war, he responded with great conviction that it was in order to prevent such a war that he was exerting all his energies and giving his whole life every day. I was very moved by his response. So, embodying the same spirit, we at Soka Gakkai Malaysia have been conducting various events to spread awareness and to empower people to take action for peace. The anti-nuclear exhibition, titled Everything You Treasure for a World Free from Nuclear Weapons, has been held at more than 100 venues across the nation to some 200,000 viewers. Signatures supporting nuclear abolition were collected and submitted to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. SGM has also been organizing forums and seminars to promote peace and nuclear disarmament. Additionally, young children and students have been participating in sessions where they learn and share about global issues and how they can contribute to peace. We also held biannual Run for Peace events since 2005, where people from all walks of life came together in solidarity for peace. So to reach out to more people, especially the young, we also initiated a social media platform, and that is called Rakan TPNW or Friends of TPNW, to spread awareness about these issues and to promote understanding of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So at the heart of all these activities is the emphasis to cultivate a culture of peace in our own lives. Sharing the vision and spirit of Mr. Toda and Mr. Ikeda, we are committed to continuing our efforts to expand the global solidarity for zero nuclear weapons.
The key to bringing the history of nuclear weapons to a close lies in ensuring that all stakeholders take shared action. This includes civil society organizations which have the role to bridge the gap between people and the state.
Civil society played an important and integral part. And in Malaysia, for example, Wisma Putra has been working with Soka Gakkai, with academic institutions, with a number of different NGOs, as well as with the Malaysian Red Crescent and ICRC, to come up with ways in terms of how we can promote the discourse and the awareness on nuclear disarmament. There's also the role that civil society can play to encourage and to lobby members of parliament to engage and to support this work. So for us in Wisma Putra, we see that the role of civil society in nuclear disarmament is very valuable. We know that without the support, without the dedication that civil society gives, then the efforts by government alone would not be enough.
On September 30th, 2020, Malaysia ratified the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and became the 46th state party to the treaty. It was the collective efforts by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, civil society organizations, and peace advocates from all walks of life.
We are proud to have contributed to this important treaty, and we encourage other states to expedite their ratifications.
However, the journey towards the total elimination of nuclear weapons is still a long one. Youths must arise with tenacious spirit to undertake this noble journey for the future that we all envision.
Well, I think it's important that young people realize that they have a very big stake in the world and in their own countries, and they need to be active in their lives.
I am very optimistic that if the younger generation continue with this level of awareness, we will arrive at peace in a shorter period of time than we expected.
Be strong, persevere, but also know that you are not alone in doing that, because there is a whole network of governments, of people in government, of NGOs, of people that work in civil society that are all working towards this same noble goal.
With people uniting in solidarity, there is no challenge that cannot be resolved. The future depends on the power and passion of youth who share the vision of a world without nuclear weapons.
Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dr. Joseph Rotblat once said, "I believe that people have the power to influence society. No effort is a waste." When a small stone is thrown into a pond, the ripples travel widely out from the center. Though the ripples may become less powerful, they still do not disappear completely. Every person has the power to create ripples that can change society. Let's start taking action today. Let's connect with others who love peace. And together we create our future, a world in which we can all live free of worries and enjoy our highest inherent dignity as human beings.